In this video, I'll be covering Rule 18, which will go over stroke and distance relief, ball lost or out of bounds, and provisional ball. Some things that this rule will cover are how to play a ball under stroke and distance, when stroke and distance is required, and when it's actually the player's choice, when a ball is considered out of bounds, how to play a provisional ball, when a provisional ball must be abandoned and play of the original ball or a substituted ball is your only choice, when the provisional ball becomes the ball in play, and then finally we'll cover the sad situation when you have to play a provisional for a provisional. So the purpose of this rule is to cover taking relief under penalty of stroke and distance, which is going back to where you previously played from. This happens when a ball is lost outside a penalty area or comes to rest out of bounds, and the required progression of playing from the teeing area to the hole has been broken. So we have to find a way to continue and finish and complete the hole. So in order to do that, the player must resume the progression by playing again from where their previous stroke was made. This rule also covers how and when the provisional ball may be played. And that is the whole intention of a provisional ball is to save time when a player's ball might have gone out of bounds or it might be lost outside a penalty area. So at any time, a player can take stroke and distance. It just costs them one stroke, and what they have to do is they can play the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. And depending on where that previous stroke was made, determines the size of the relief area where they will be putting a ball back into play. The player always has the stroke and distance option regardless of where the ball is on the course. Even when a rule requires the player to take relief in a certain way or to play a ball from a certain place, stroke and distance is always an option. Once the player puts another ball into play, it's important to know that the original ball is no longer an option for them to play. They must not play that ball. And this is true even if the original ball ends up being found within the 3-minute time period. Because that ball has been put into play or substituted in, the golfer cannot then proceed with the original ball. They've already taken an action and have to continue with that golf ball they put in play under stroke and distance. The only time this does not apply to a ball to be played from where a previous stroke is made is if the player is announcing that they are playing a provisional ball, or if they are playing a second ball in stroke play. So the two situations where a golfer would be playing a second ball is to complete play of the hole after possibly playing from a wrong place, or when they have a rule situation they don't know how to proceed, the player can play two balls to then ask the committee what is the correct ruling. So let's talk about when a ball is lost or out of bounds. A ball is lost if it's not found within 3 minutes. We know in 2019 that was a change. It used to be 5 minutes, so they reduced that time. So if it's not found in 3 minutes, by the player or their caddy, then it is considered lost. If a ball is found in that time, but they're not certain if it is the player's ball, the player has to promptly go over and try to identify the golf ball. We're giving a golfer a reasonable amount of time to do this. So even if, say the ball, they think they found the ball and that's within 3 minutes, if the 3-minute time expires, that golfer still has time to walk over and see if the golf ball that was found is actually theirs. If the player does not identify his or her golf ball in that time, then the ball is considered lost. So if they don't make an effort to go over and identify it, they have to proceed as if the ball has been lost. So let's look at when a ball is out of bounds. So a ball at rest is out of bounds only when all of it is outside the boundary edge of the course. So in these two examples, you can see the picture on the left, out of bounds is defined by stakes. The one on the right, out of bounds is defined by a line. So with stakes, it's that inside edge, that really dark green line, is defining out of bounds. So you can see the entire golf ball has to be out of bounds for it to be considered lost. So the two with the green check marks, the one that has part out and part in, that ball is considered inbounds. When a line is used, it's the inside edge that is defining out of bounds. So this golfer is still okay for the one that's partly on the course and partly on the line, but the one that's entirely on the line is considered out of bounds because a portion of it has to be touching the golf course. When a ball is out of bounds, it's okay for a player to stand out of bounds to play that shot, as long as the ball itself is inbounds. So if a ball is determined to be lost or out of bounds, the player must take stroke and distance. That's their option. They add one penalty stroke, and they can play the original ball, or they can take another ball, substitute it, and play it from where the previous stroke was made. So there's some situations where you have to decide what to do when kind of exceptional circumstances happen. So in those cases, the player may substitute another ball under the rule that applies, only if it is known or virtually certain what has happened to the golf ball. So these pictures below are a few examples, but we'll talk about each of them here shortly. So in that case, instead of playing stroke and distance, the player can substitute another golf ball and act under the rule that is applying to that specific situation. So a couple of these examples would be if the ball came to rest on the course and was moved by an outside influence. So this first picture on the left, getting ready to hit a shot and a dog comes by and takes the golf ball. Another situation would be if a player accidentally plays the wrong ball. So Ed here is getting ready to play a shot. He ends up hitting David's golf ball. In that case, you can substitute a golf ball. You don't have to go up and take unreasonable time to go get the golf ball that was hit by Ed for Dave to be able to play his shot. A couple of other examples are if the ball comes to rest in or on a movable obstruction, so in these recycling containers, or an abnormal course condition, which could be a large area of temporary water. It could be an immovable obstruction, such as the shed in this picture. It could be where the golf ball is in a penalty area. Now we can't, in hitting a golf ball in a pond, it's not reasonable to say that the golfer has to go find that golf ball. If it's known or virtually certain that's where it is, they can proceed under that rule. Or you have a case where maybe the ball was deliberately deflected or stopped by a person. I think this comes into play more often on tour when you have spectators, but it falls under that specific rule, and they would not be required to take stroke and distance. They would have additional options in that case. So the penalty for a ball that's played from a wrong place, so if we don't act properly when stroke and distance is required, then the golfer is going to get the general penalty, which is 2 strokes in stroke play, loss of hole in match play. Okay, so let's talk about 18.3, which is provisional ball. We'll go through the definition, and then we'll cover each of the A through C of 18.3. So a provisional ball is another ball played in case the ball just played by the player may be out of bounds or lost outside of a penalty area. The provisional ball is not their ball in play unless it becomes the ball in play under certain situations, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So a provisional ball can be played if a ball might be lost outside a penalty area or out of bounds. And the whole intention of this rule is to save time, but there are some procedural things that the golfer has to do when they're playing a provisional ball. A provisional ball itself might be lost outside a penalty area, or be out of bounds. In that case, the player may play another provisional ball. So that provisional ball then has the same relationship to the first provisional as the first one has to the original. So in that case, it's the player hits a shot, it might be out of bounds, so they play a provisional ball. Say it heads towards the same direction. In that case, they can play another ball for that provisional ball. So they essentially have two provisional balls in place, but each one relates to the stroke ahead of it. The player must announce if they're playing a provisional ball, and it has to be done in a certain way. It's not enough for the player to say that they're putting another ball in play or they're going to play again, because in that case, we don't know if they're just acting under stroke and distance or are they playing a provisional. So that's why the announcement part is important. They must use the word provisional to make it very clear. Or if they don't use that word, they have to indicate it in a recognizable way. So if the player doesn't announce that they are playing a provisional and plays a ball from where the previous stroke was made, that ball is now the player's ball in play. Because they did not announce, we're going to assume that they are playing under stroke and distance, and so they'll have to continue with that ball. They've kind of waived their option for the provisional ball. The player may continue play with the provisional ball without losing his status, as long as the provisional ball is not played from a spot closer to where the original ball is estimated to be. So here, playing from A is okay because the original ball is somewhere along that dotted line. If the golfer then played from B, there would be an issue. So there are two cases where a provisional ball becomes the ball in play. When the original ball is lost anywhere on the course except in a penalty area or is out of bounds. And second, when the provisional ball is played from a spot near the hole than where the original ball is estimated to be. So if a player plays the provisional ball into the same general location as where the original ball is, but they're not able to identify which is which, you have a certain method you have to use to determine which one they have to play. There are two cases where this happens. If only one golf ball is found, but they don't know if it was the original or the provisional ball. Or you have the situation where both are found, but you don't know which is which. If only one of the balls is found on the course, that ball is treated as the provisional, which is now in play. So you can't assume that that was the original one. By default, you have to proceed as if that is the provisional ball. If both golf balls are found on the course, the player must choose one of the balls to treat as the provisional, which is now in play, and the other ball is treated as lost. So in this case, they choose, but you have to continue as if it's the provisional, assuming the original golf ball is now lost. So there are two situations when a provisional ball has to be abandoned. The first is when it is found on the course outside a penalty area before the end of the 3 minutes, or when the original ball is found in a penalty area and it's known or virtually certain to be in there. So in either of those cases, the player cannot make a stroke on the provisional ball because that has now become a wrong ball. All strokes with that provisional ball that took place are canceled. They don't count towards anything, but the golfer has to proceed under the rule that applies to, say in this case, a penalty area. They would have to proceed under that rule. They can't continue with that provisional ball. And again, if a player plays from a wrong place, meaning they did this improperly, they would get the general penalty, 2 strokes in stroke play, loss of hole in match play. That's all for Rule 18. Thanks for sticking with me through this presentation. If you have questions, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help answer anything we can, or reach out to the USGA to get additional help.